actually solve problems. Most of all, I was betting on the ability of ordinary people to come together. You know, some of you know I now live in Chicago, but I'm not originally from Chicago. I moved there after college. When the steel closed, there were a group of churches that were trying to figure out how to deal with the devastation and how to get people back to work. And so I worked as a community organizer with these churches, setting up job training programs for the unemployed and after-school programs for youth. And it was the best education I ever had because it taught me ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they're unified, when they're come together, when they're working together. It taught me the change doesn't happen from the top down. It happens from the bottom up because the people demand real change. And so, election, this was a chance for us to come together. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, young, old. If all of us came together to challenge the special interests that have come to dominate Washington, there'd be no challenge we could not meet, no destiny we could not fulfill. That's why I decided to run for President of the United States. And I'm here to report that after 15 months, after speaking to hundreds of thousands of people and shaking hundreds of thousands of hands and kissing hundreds of babies, I am here to report that my bet paid off because to write a new chapter in American history. That's why we're here today. It's time, right now, this election. Now's the time. Now, bringing about change is not easy. Bringing about change isn't easy. You know, people ask me, they say, why is it that every 4 years, presidential candidates come and say they're going to fix the health care system? We've been talking about the health care system for decades now, through Democratic and Republican administrations, and it just keeps on getting worse. Why is that? And I have to explain, look, you've got drug companies and insurance companies spent $1 billion over the last decade preventing change from happening. They're profiting from the system. So if they've got lobbyists and they're making campaign contributions, it shouldn't be surprising that the health care laws coming out of Washington are very good for them, but they're not so good for you. It's true on energy. We've been talking about our energy problems since Jimmy Carter, since the 70s and the gas lines. And the only thing that's changed is we actually import more oil from the Middle East now. We are paying record prices at the pumps. I don't need to tell you that. And meanwhile, ExxonMobil made $11 billion last quarter. $11 billion with a B. Why is that? Well, when Bush put Cheney in charge of energy policy, Cheney met with the renewable energy groups once. He met with the environmental groups once. He met with the oil and gas companies 40 times. 40 times. So it shouldn't be surprising then that the laws are very good for ExxonMobil, but they're not so good for you. Shouldn't surprise you. So if we are going to bring about change, we've got to understand that there are people protecting the status quo who are profiting from the system the way it is right now. And a lot of them have a lot of power in Washington. And that's why I've said consistently throughout this campaign, it's not enough for us just to change political parties in the White House. We've got to change how business is done in Washington. This is a difference. This is a difference that Senator Clinton. Senator Clinton is a smart person. She is a capable person. we have a lot of similar policies. But she doesn't see that the problem we've got in Washington has to be fixed. The problem of lobbyists and special interests, money dominating the agenda, and the American people not being heard. So that's why at the beginning of this campaign I said, I'm not taking PAC money. I'm not taking money from federal lobbyists. And everybody said, well, I don't know how he's going to fund his campaign. I said, I'm going to fund it through the American people. $25 contributions, $50 contributions, $100 contributions. We've raised more money from you than anybody has ever raised before because you have decided to take your country back. So, same thing on our political organization. We didn't get any big endorsements early on, because nobody knew how to pronounce my name. So everybody said, well, I don't know how he's going to be able to compete and have all these big endorsements from all these Washington insiders. Well, I had you. You organized, you mobilized, you registered voters, you knocked on. And so we've built the best political organization in the country. From the grassroots, from the bottom up. That's how change is going to come about. But look, we've got to understand, though, that it is tough because our politics are used to not listening to the American people. We've gotten used to it. There's so many people out there that I meet on the trail. A young woman I met gets 3 hours of sleep a night because she's going to school full-time, but she's got a sister with cerebral palsy, so she also has to work full-time in the night shift just to support her and her sister and to pay their medical. Seems to be listening about how hard it is to finance college education these days, or what people who've got an illness in the family, what they're going through. She doesn't feel like she's being heard. Just like the workers here in Muncie or all across the country who've been laid off. See their jobs shipped overseas. They don't just lose their jobs, they lose their pensions, they lose their health care. They're having for jobs at the age of 50 with teenage kids for jobs paying $7 an hour at the local Walmart. They can't make ends meet on that. They can't make a mortgage on that, but they're not being heard. Veterans, military families. I meet so many families, their loved one is on their third rotation, their fourth rotation. You've got fathers who don't even know their kids because they've been deployed so much. And when they come back, what do they find out? They've got to beg for disability payments. They've got to fight through the bureaucracy to get in the VA. They're not getting the mental health services that they need. They don't feel like they're being heard. And that's the problem. The problem is our politics doesn't let the American people get heard. People know that it's not easy solving some of these problems, but they want to feel at least like somebody's fighting for them. And right now they don't. It's interesting, right? Lately there's been a little typical sort of political flare-up because I said something that everybody knows is true, which is that there are a whole bunch of folks in towns in Pennsylvania, in towns right here in Indiana, in my hometown in Illinois, who are bitter. They are angry. They feel like they've been left behind. They feel like nobody's paying attention to what they're going through. So I said, well, when you're bitter, you turn to what you can count on. So people, they vote about guns, or they take comfort from their faith and their family and their community.